Starting with this session, I would like to ask you people, am I clearly audible?
Yes, sir, audible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. And also, like, I would like to ask you all, are you all clear with whatever we have done in previous two sessions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So now we'll start with the like session. And before I begin with the session, I would like to uh, tell you people that please take a copy and a pen with you all for this session, because this will be more a sort of a theoretical type session where I would insist you all to have some copy and pen with you all so that you can write out certain things. We will be discussing a lot about fundamental analysis, right from the very beginning, what fundamental analysis is, to what things you should check while you are doing a fundamental analysis of any particular company. Also, we will be having a proper Q&A session at the very end of this session. It is just because we so that we don't get diverted from any like from the point at any point of time. I hope I am pretty much clear and we are good to go.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so today I welcome you all for fundamental analysis session, and your major key takeaways from this session will be we will be giving you certain sort of things, certain knowledge and points that you should keep in mind before you do fundamental analysis of any stock. We will be giving you 8 pointers which everyone should look before finalizing in which company you should invest. Always remember, fundamental analysis is for people who are who are pretty much a kind of investors, because fundamental analysis start giving you calls and returns after a certain period of say a quarter or a year. So if you are doing a fundamental analysis, you are happy with the company's fundamentals, then you should at least wait for 1 year or so in order to allow that company to give returns to you. Okay, so starting with the session, what actually fundamental analysis is? Fundamental analysis is a technique that attempts to determine a security's value. What I mean by securities value is a company's stock value by focusing on underlying factors that affect a company's actual business and its future prospects. While you do a fundamental analysis, you try to look out at various other aspects of a company, like what do they actually do? Are they earning a good profit? Are they like are they able to turn up their inventories well? Are they earning in such a manner that even though they have a huge profit with them, do they actually have cash in hand in order to pay you all? What are if suppose what is the return they are earning? Suppose a company come to you and they say that yes, we have 10,000 rupees in our hand, and with this 10,000 rupees we earn 100 rupees every year. Will you rather go for that company? We will answer all these questions in coming slides. Okay, so while we do fundamental analysis, we actually have to think of things like from where should we start? What are the components that should be considered while we do fundamental analysis? So the first thing is economic analysis. In economic analysis, what we do is we look for these particular things at major points. These are the major points, like what is the GDP, what is the inflation rate, what is the forex reserve position of our country, and some seasonal factors are also there which affects a particular industry, a particular company's functioning. How do they actually impact? We study that in our industry analysis. I would like to ask you all, is inflation good for an economy? Guys, yes, like if someone knows, please unmute yourself and you can tell me. Otherwise, I will tell you, is inflation good for an economy? Okay, assuming that no one has the answer to this thing, see, inflation is really important. It is a necessary evil for an economy. But too much of inflation is also a bad indicator for an economy, and if there is deflation, then also it is a very bad sign for an economy. Gross domestic product, I hope every one of you know, it is the aggregate value of final goods or services produced or rendered in an economy. Forex reserve position is nothing but talking in simple terms, what is the value of rupees to dollar, or rupees to pounds? These are certain things like how much foreign currency or foreign reserve we have in our economy. And even monsoon is something which affects the functioning of various companies. Why? Because as we all know, India is a nation where most of our population, and the majority part of our population is involved in agriculture, and agriculture is somewhere down the line is affected from monsoon as well. So these are the things which we try to look into when we are doing economic analysis. Then we go for industry analysis. In industry analysis, we particularly go for, like, there are certain basic parameters. First one is cyclic industry. These type of industries are the ones who really do good when GDP is going good. And it might happen that if GDP is somewhere down the line shuffling, or is like in a negative trend, then these industries also show some negative results or negative returns to their people. Just a clear example of this type of industry could be an automobile industry. Once the lockdown was imposed, our GDP and all the situations were so bad that you could see particular companies like Maruti Suzuki and Tata and all these were facing some problems. Their financials were not that much strong during that period of time. Why? Because they are a cyclic industry and they are pretty much dependent on economy, on GDP. And once there were unlocks, things were opening up, you could see in newspapers that the sales have growth, and the companies have started performing well. They are generating good revenues, and it is showing some growth. So why do these things happen? Because the GDP was initially at a very downtrend, but once everything was opened up, there was a certain direction for GDP to grow up, and that is why these cyclic industries also went up. The second thing is subset of industry. For this, I would like to tell you this thing. If there is suppose a pharmaceutical industry, then it is not like that every company who is under pharmaceutical industry is producing the same types of medicines. Some are there who are preparing medicines for cancer treatments. Some are there for COVID vaccines. Some are preparing in like medicines for hepatitis B. So these companies are subset industries. For better clarification, like suppose Sun Pharma is producing medicines for cancer, like cancer disease, and Pfizer is producing vaccines for COVID. And there is another company named, say, Cipla. Cipla is working for hepatitis B injections and all medicines for hepatitis B. So, in pharma industry, Cipla, Sun Pharma, and Pfizer are the subset industries. Then we have life cycle of industry. Uh, it is nothing but how long the cycle goes on. There are certain, like, if you will see, monsoon also plays a part in this type of industries. There are certain industries which have a major work during particular season only. These are the seasonal industries. So their life cycle is pretty much short. Say suppose apples come only in winters, and there is a company which is producing products for apple, like apples only, products that are pretty much focused on apples. So for those companies, the life cycle is pretty much short. It is just like from October to February they are working, and for the rest part of, like, for the rest part they are working, but the peak is just finished off. The same way, say Voltas, Whirlpool, Symphony, they are producing air conditioners, fans, and coolers. So it is a type of a peak when, like, during the month of April to June, or some parts of July as well, the industry is at its peak. Then afterwards, it is working, it is producing goods, but their demand is pretty much low. So this is what we do in industry analysis. Also, the last point is government policies. How government policy is favoring or opposing a particular industry. For example, say tomorrow, if there is another conference of PM where he announces that he have came up with an idea to boost the real estate industry, then what will you guys do? Like, say suppose you are traders, you want to gain some returns in stock markets. The very next day, what will you do? Like, will you start purchasing the stocks of a company who is in real estate business?
So we can go for metal industry and cement industry.
Yeah, exactly. This is where most of the people make mistakes. Like, say if like in our case, Mr. Prime Minister has given the orders that he will be coming with a policy which will favor real estate business. What majority of people will do, they will go and buy the stocks of companies who are in real estate business. But they don't look for other companies. Like, if real estate business will prosper, won't the cement industry, like cement companies, the companies which are producing cements, will go up? Won't they benefit from it? Steels, paints, because if a building is made, then obviously you have to paint it. For making buildings, you need steel, iron. So these are the subset industries, or these are some major industries which will also prosper. So instead of going and buying only real estate business stocks, it is pretty much a prudent decision that you go for cement industry stock. Why? Because majority of the people are going for real estate companies. So the stock price will go up, and it might happen that you buy at a higher price. But there are very few people who will go for paints and cements. So it is like you will get a better deal in cements and paints industry. Okay, now then finally we go for company analysis, where we study the financial statements of a company and look out for certain sort of things which shows you that whether the company is up to the mark or up to the standards which you are looking for or not. Basically, we look for profit and loss accounts, balance sheet, cash flow statements, notes to accounts where the complete analysis or detail of balance sheet is provided. And also one more statement has been added very recently. It is statement of changes in equity. Now, talking about approaches to fundamental analysis, like what you should actually do, there are basically two approaches. The first one is top to bottom approach, where you first analyze an economy, then you go for industry analysis. So particularly if you are happy with economic analysis, then you will go and search which industry is doing well, and do they actually have a future and a good growth in future. If you are satisfied with that particular industry, like you have an option of FMCG, IT, and say pharmaceuticals. So what is your view about particular these three particulars industries? If you are happy with IT sector and you believe that yes, IT sector may go up in coming future, then you go for company analysis, the analysis of those companies who are in IT sector. The second one is bottom to top approach, which is pretty much used and majority of people do this thing. They go for company analysis first, then they go for industry analysis, and then they go for economic analysis. We will be majorly discussing about company analysis only during our session. So while you do a company analysis, there are basically two things which comes under company analysis. The first one is financials. Like I have already discussed with you that there are P&L accounts, P&L accounts, balance sheet, cash flow statements, and these certain sort of other things also which come under financials of a company. But what are the non-financial things which everyone should look for? It is nothing but how honest the particular management of that company is, and like what is their future aspects. Are they coming up with some good future projects that could like give them a very huge amount of return? So these are the things which come under non-financial statements, non-financial company analysis. Talking about market capitalization first, because it is really important to know what actually a small cap company, mid cap company, or large cap company is. A company who has a market capitalization of less than 5,000 crore is named as small cap company. Every one of you might be knowing all these things, but what actually capitalization is? Market capitalization is nothing but a multiplication of whatever the current stock price is multiplied by the number of shares which are freely floating in the market. I would request you all to if anyone wants, they can note it down in a separate copy, because this is something which is really basic, but most of the people don't even know. Now, as I have already told you how we calculate market capitalization, there is one thing which needs to be kept in mind. I told you that market capitalization is equal to the current stock price in the market multiplied by total number of shares which are freely floating in market. See, whenever a company issues some sort of shares, there is some part of share which is with promoters, and the other part, the part is in the stock markets for that are available for people to actively trade into. So while we look for market capitalization, we majorly go for the number of shares that are freely floating in the stock markets. We don't talk about the shares that the promoters actually have with them. They keep it with them so that they have a major saying in the board of directors meeting, and just to keep a major power with themselves. Okay, so for a company whose market capitalization is somewhere between 5,000 to 20,000 crore rupees, they are considered as a mid cap company. Whereas a company which has more than 20,000 crore rupees market capitalization is termed as a large cap company. I hope I'm pretty much clear. So talking about small cap company, what actually are the features of a small cap company? See, they have more growth opportunities. Why? Because you can think of it like that these companies don't have that much of like capital with them, but they are coming up with newer ideas. They have just started off with the things, and they haven't reached to their peaks. So there are very high probabilities that these companies may give you a very good return in long period of time. But as we all know, it is a very famous saying that the more the risk is, then only the more profits are. So if you are looking that yes, these companies might give you a very good returns in future, there is some sort of very high risk also, because as I've already told you, these companies are somewhat in a very initial stage of their journey in the market. It might happen that there is some conflict or there is some fault in the company, and the shares may go down as well. So it might happen that you end up losing your money. But if you are there and you have that risk capacity, if you have done a good fundamental analysis about the company, then there are lots of companies which are in small cap category only, but have a very good amount of growth opportunity. They have a very good potential in them to give a good return to their particular investors or shareholders. Talking about mid cap companies, they offer you a very less risk as compared to small cap companies, because they are somewhat hanging between the initial stage and the final stage, like the peak stage of their journey. So they have a little less risk than the small cap companies, and they have more growth opportunities than large cap companies, because they are, even though they are in the very middle of their say journey in the market, they have a good opportunity and a good distance to cover in order to get at the peak. So a lower risk, but like lower risk than small cap companies, but more growth opportunities than a large cap companies. Talking about large cap companies, they have a very less risk. If you will talk about Reliance share today, it is a very minimal chances that it goes below like a certain level of points. Say if today Reliance is hovering around 2,000 rupees per share, there are very much less like 0.1% chances that it will go down to such a level that in coming 5 years or 6 years it will be hovering around 100 rupees only, unless and until and unless there is a major stock split and the value has gone down. Also, since these companies are from very long in the market, they have almost reached their peak. But they I'm not saying that they don't have growth opportunities. If they come up with good future prospects, future projects, then they have a very good growth opportunities. But as compared to companies which are in mid cap companies or small cap companies categories, they have a very less growth opportunities. Now we'll come up directly onto fundamental analysis. the first thing which you can look in a company is what is the trend in the profits of a company. Are they in an increasing trend or are they in a decreasing trend? See, there might be situations that the shares, the profit is growing, falling, growing, falling. It's in a like sideways trend. So better if you can like avoid those type of stocks, because you are at a very beginning stage of your investment journey. So there are not that like not everyone is that uh, in that zone, or are not favoring all sort of like all sort of these type of companies who are very much uh, out of form and who are not performing so well and in a very constant manner. Okay, so before starting with these points now, uh, I would like to tell you people that from this point, from this slide, you will get to know about 8 particular parameters which everyone should look in a company while they do fundamental analysis. This is just like how we rate a particular movie. There are 5 stars, like say for acting, music, drama, or choreography, and say script. So these are 5 parameters, and on these basis we rate a movie. Similarly, what we have done is we have chosen 8 points that you should analyze before investing in a company. Why we are telling you this is, while we have chosen all these 8 points, we have kept in mind that we certainly cover all the aspects of a particular company. So it would be good if you write down all these points. They will like it will help you once you start analyzing stocks on your own. So the first one is liquidity ratio. In this liquidity ratio, we particularly look for 2 ratios. The first one is current ratio. If you people are from commerce background, you might be knowing what current ratio is. The formula for this ratio is current assets divided by current liabilities. But why do we do why do we look for current ratio? Because it helps you to understand the liquidity position of a particular company, how well they are able to pay off their upcoming liabilities, like their liabilities which might be arising in a very coming future, like say after 3 months or after like 10 months only. So this ratio will help you analyze these things. Ideally, this ratio should be 2:1. What I mean by 2:1 is, for every one current liability, the company should have 2 current assets. For example, if we have like if a company has a creditor of say 1000 rupees, the company should ideally have a current asset, say balance in their bank accounts of around 2000. This ratio should be ideally this only. But even if the ratio is little bit up or down, like from 1.5 is to 1, or it is around 2.5 is to 1, then also it is good. But it should not be less than it. Why? Because this certainly shows you the short term liquidity, or I must tell you the very immediate liquidity of a company. So if this ratio is too high, then also it is not good, because it somewhere down the line impacts, like reflects that the company is not able to use its assets in a proper way, and they are uh, misusing or less utilizing their assets and liabilities. The second one in this liquidity ratio only is quick ratio. This shows you the immediate ability of a particular company to pay its debt. The formula is pretty much similar, like current assets divided by current liabilities, but the only difference is here in like from current assets you decrease the current inventory which you have, because somewhere down the line it might happen that your stock may take some time for you to like clear off and get converted into cash and cash equivalents. And here we are talking about the immediate ability of a company to pay its debt. Anything greater than 1 is perfect. So like here it should be ideally 2:1, or can be 1.5:1 or 2.5:1. Here anything greater than 1 is perfect. So what I mean by this here is, for every say current liability of 1000 rupees, even if you have 1100 rupees as current asset, then also it is good, because it shows you that even if you pay off 1000 rupees to your current liabilities, or to say to your sundry creditors even, then also you will be left with 100 rupees in your hand. And this 100 rupees is like you can assume that it is yours only. Even if tomorrow company closes, they have 100 rupees with them, which they can give it to their shareholders. The second point, the very important point, is solvency ratio. In this ratio, we basically go with debt to equity ratio. And what is the benefit of this ratio? It shows you the capital structure of a company. Like, are they too much heavy on their debts, or are they running completely on equities? See, ideally the balance should be there. It is not like a company must go and operate only on its equity shares only, equity capital only, but there should be certain debts also. But there is nothing written in any book that debts should be there. There are many companies. A classic example of it is ITC. They have a very less debt, in their whole capital structure. So how do you calculate your debt to equity ratio? You divide your total long-term debts with the shareholders fund. This ratio is used to analyze the capital structure of an organization. Ideally, it should be maximum 2:1. What I mean by 2:1 is, for like if you have 1000 rupees as your equity capital, then at max 2000 should be your borrowed capital. Like if you have ever taken a bank loan for say 10 years, if a company has taken a bank loan for 10 years, then it will be considered as a long-term debt for them. So if they have invested 1000 rupees in the business of their own, then ideally maximum 2000 should be borrowed from the bank, not more than this. If lesser is there is no issues with it. But while you are doing fundamental analysis, at maximum you should go with 2:1 only. So these are the 2 stars which we have covered. The third star, or the third point, is profitability ratio. Here we will talk about return on capital employed. Just a simple example for you all to understand this. Say if tomorrow I come to you and I tell you people that hey, I am there and I am in market and I'm running my own business, and I have invested 1000. I started with an investment of 1000 only, and after a year I have 1010 say 60 rupees with me now. Like I have earned 60 rupees as a profit from my business. Will you like to invest in my business? The thing is, why should you invest? Why? Because my earning after deducting all my interest and taxes was just rupees 60. That was my profit. Okay. if you'll see, I started my business with 1000 rupees. I have 1060 rupees at the very end of the business, like of the year. So ideally 60 rupees is my profit. But if you will calculate 60 divided by 1000, the return I have generated is just 6%. And just 6% is not something you are looking for. See, if I am asking you to invest in my particular company, then I should be able to generate good returns for you. Otherwise, if I am giving you 6% return only, then better you go and make an FD in a bank account. There are some surety that you will get at least 6% at max. Say, like if there is any bank who is providing 6% on FD, there is certainty that after a year end you will get at least 6% in this much amount. And it might happen that in the very next year I might be able to earn just 50 rupees, so that will be only 5% of my capital employed. So why to take so much risk in that case? But if a company is giving you a return which is at least 10% or higher than it, then you should go for that particular company. How to calculate return on capital employed is your earnings before, your earning before interest and tax should be divided by the total capital employed in the business and multiplied by 100. So in order to get more figure in percentage form. So this is something which you should go and look for, because if a company is providing you return of less than say 10%, then there are various other options to go for. They will give you a better return than this. The next thing is activity ratio. This in this ratio we talk about inventory turnover ratio. What actually inventory turnover ratio helps you to determine? It helps you to determine the operational efficiency of a particular company. Say a company is able to generate a very huge amount of inventory, but they are not able, there is not so much demand in the market, and they are not able to completely sell off that inventory in the market. So what is the benefit of like generating a huge amount of inventory if there is no demand in the market? But suppose there is another company which performs production at a very high level, and they have a very good demand in the market. What are the two cases that they have? Either they go and sell it off at at a premium price so that their profits are increased, or the second thing is, the more they produce, the cheaper the cost will be, and with that cheaper cost, competing with the other companies that are in the market will be a better option. They would be able to compete even at a lower price. So the more they will sell, the more profit they will generate. This is something which we understand in inventory turnover ratio. The formula for this is cost of goods sold divided by the average inventory which they maintain during a particular period of time. Say, how do we calculate average inventory? Say, opening inventory plus the closing inventory divided by 2. This is the average inventory, and the cost of goods sold is calculated with some formulas that I don't think are much necessary for people like us who are just looking for these ratios. We have nothing to do with how do we calculate the cost of goods sold or what was the average inventory. These things you will get to know once you will dive deep into the financials of a company. The next thing is reserves to share capital ratio, or in a simple language, what will I tell you is you just go and look in the balance sheet. There is a term named as reserves and surplus. So what is the trend in that reserves and surplus? While you will go and analyze the financial statements of a company, there will be say 5-year data given to you. Then you can try to analyze like whether the surplus and reserves ratio, like surplus and reserves are in an increasing order, in a decreasing order, or are they stable. So the interpretation for this is the more the profit like they will get, the ideally the higher the reserves and surplus will be, and these reserves are made just in order to pay off any contingent liability that might happen in future. So this tells you that if like the reserves are increasing, then this shows you that even if tomorrow a company fails in their work and they have to immediately like say they have suffered a huge loss also, then they have a very good amount of reserve which they prepared in order to face these liabilities or situations only. So this is something which tells you how well uh, they are prepared for any liability that might occur in future. Free cash flows, a very easy but an important aspect. See, how do you calculate free cash flows is go and check out the cash flow statement of a company. Simply subtract the cash flow from operating activities. No, sorry. Once you will go and analyze the cash flow statement in your investing activities, you will get to know that there are certain purchases made and there are certain sales of fixed assets made. So just when you will go and analyze, purchases will be made, the purchases of sales assets, sorry, fixed assets will be depicted as negative, and the sales that have been made of that particular fixed assets will be depicted in a positive figures. So just find out the difference between both and then subtract it from the cash flow from operating activities. This will help you to know what is the actual cash available for a company to pay off to their say shareholders in forms of dividends or in any other monetary form like interim dividends and all. Why do we actually need to look out what is the free cash flows of a company? Say, see, there are many cases where a company shows a very good amount of profit, but how do they will share this profit to their shareholders if they are lacking cash with them? There are many ways in which these things might happen. Say a company was selling off its inventory, sorry, their stock, uh, on a basis, not on a cash basis. They were like giving to their debtors. So the debtors have increased and the sales have also increased, but what will be the impact of this in the financial statements? The sales will increase, then the profits will also increase for them, but they don't have any cash with them. The debtors are the ones who don't pay you cash at that immediate point of time, but once a company will declare its dividend, they have to pay off to their shareholders in cash forms only. So there are many cases where the profits have increased, but the free cash flows is not with the companies. So they are not able to give you a better dividend. So this is something which I always look forward in a particular in any company, because no matter what is the profit, if they don't have any cash, they won't be able to give me any dividend or any return. So, and I am in stock market just to get returns. I have nothing to do with if a company do good in market or do bad. If they are giving me returns, then only I will stick with them. Otherwise, they are of no use for me. Now we'll look for a shareholding pattern, a very important aspect. Once you will analyze or you will go on any website you will get to know what is the what is the pattern of their equity share. The same thing is depicted in statement of changes in equity statement, which we talked about while we were on the very beginning of our session. So in this particular thing, what we go and look for is go and check whether any shares have been pledged by the promoters. There might be two cases. The promoters might have pledged their shares in order to get some loans from financial institutions in order to collect some money or to generate some money for their future projects. Whereas the second scenario can be that the promoters have pledged the shares because they are losing the interest, or they are losing the hope in the company. They are not that much confident enough that yes, tomorrow this company will do great. So there might be a situation, or there might be a case where promoters have pledged a lot of shares, and say if tomorrow they are unable to pay off their debts, then these shares will be sold off in the market, and the financial institutions will sell off these shares in the market in order to recover money. But what will happen is the powers of the promoters, they will get diluted, and it might happen that another company might take over this particular company, and the whole management can change, or everything might go wrong for you, because if certain news get highlighted in news channels to the public, then there is a lot of selling pressure, and you might face that even if you were in profits because of that company, you will get into losses. So ideally it should be zero, or should be very minimal. And if you get to know that yes, these the promoters of this company have pledged these shares, don't just cross the company. It is never bad, but you should know why these shares have been pledged by the promoters. The very last is the valuation ratio. I would prefer and I will suggest you all to keep this ratio at the very last of your analysis. Earlier, we have already talked about 7 parameters. If those 7 parameters are working really good, then this parameter will help you to analyze and to make a proper decision whether you should go with this or not. See, this ratio is price to earning ratio. This is how you can calculate it. Why? An interpretation, but you won't be getting this. Why? Let me ask you let me clarify these things in a beautiful example. Every one of us have smartphones with us. Today we have smartphones. The companies are giving a very tough competition to every other company. There are companies like Oppo, MI, and Realme who have smartphones of similar range as well. They are pretty much of same functions as well. But there are certain people who will not go for any smartphone of these company. They will go for iPhones, even though iPhones are pretty much of uh, higher cost or higher prices, but then also people go for it. Why do they go for it? Because they believe they have a very good reputation of Apple as a company, and they are pretty much sure that even if they are charging a bit higher amount, then also it is really good because their phone is pretty much good. and the functions are very good. The after sales services of Apples are also good, and there are many other factors which affect uh, people's ideology about any to go with any particular, say, company or a brand. So this is something which we'll understand in valuation ratio. See, what happens is, while you are calculating price to earning ratio, the formula is pretty much simple. Whatever your market price of that share is, just divide it with earnings per share. You will get to know about PE ratio. But what is the benefit of it? Say if the PE ratio of a particular company is 10% or 10, so what is that meaning? So while you do a PE ratio analysis, you have to compare that particular company's PE ratio with the industry PE ratio. Say, if we are analyzing HUL as a company and their PE ratio is say 9 or say 10%. Okay, so what you will do is you will compare that 10% with the industry in which HUL is working. HUL is a FMCG company. So FMCG is the industry and HUL is the subset industry of this particular industry. So we will calculate the PE ratio of that industry as well, what the actual FMCG industry is performing, and then we will compare it. Now, say the industry PE ratio is 11% and HUL is working at 10%. So what does this actually mean? If HUL is at 10% and industry is at 11%, it means that for any company in that particular, say, industry, you would get, say, 11% of growth opportunity, but in HUL it is just 10%. So they have a growth opportunity of 1%. So you can, it is a pretty much cheap at whatever price you are getting HUL, so you can go and buy it. The second thing is, say, suppose HUL is hovering around 11 as PE ratio, whereas the industry ratio is just 10%. So what does it mean? That HUL is charging 1% extra as a premium amount. So it is a costly share as compared to other shares who are in that similar industry. So it completely depends upon you. If your analysis, your 7 points, which we have already discussed earlier, if they are giving you a good call that yes, HUL is a very good, fundamentally strong company, then even if you have to pay a little bit extra amount of some money, then what is the disadvantage of giving an extra money to a company which is fundamentally really strong and have a very good opportunity to give you a very decent return in future? So this is something which we look forward. Then we come to news analysis. See, there are lots of news and rumors that get reflected in the market, and it really shakes the market sometime, and it really impacts the valuation of a share. Even you might think, like, even if a company is doing very good fundamentally, there might be chances that a company goes down at its valuation. So once you are happy with the fundamental analysis, stick to it. It will take a certain period of time for a particular stock to start giving you returns. But if the company is fundamentally strong, it will certainly give you very decent amount of returns. Now we'll take a very live example of ITC. So here I have the profit and loss statement of ITC. This is not the actual statement, but there are certain calculations which we have already performed. So, like, as I told you, this is the price to earning. And yeah, this is the price to earning ratio. If you will see, this is the price to earning ratio of ITC. But what should I do with this? Say till March 2020, it was 13.79. What should I do with this? I have nothing to do with it. But I will compare it with what is the like say price to earning ratio of this company with the industry, like whatever, what is the industry PE ratio. And you, if you see, say, yeah, recently the price to earning ratio is 19.87%, whereas the industry PE ratio is somewhere around 18.5%. So ITC stock is a bit, I must tell you, a bit expensive as compared to other like other companies who are in this particular industry. But this can't be a sole indicator or a parameter. Other things are there which we need to take into consideration. For this, we have balance sheet of ITC. See, this is reserves. There is a very common thing in these. It is in an increasing trend. See, from March 12th, it increased by 4,000 odd numbers, then again by 4,000 odd, then by 11,000, a big like upsurge in reserves, then by 4,000 and odd levels. And if you can see, it is in an uptrend, so it is a very good indicator. I am getting a good call, but I will look for what is their inventory turnover ratio. The higher the better it is. And see, uh, it was in an uptrend till then. After March 19, it was doing really great, but the pandemic hit the sector really bad. But FMCG was doing really great, so it didn't impacted the inventory turnover ratio of ITC, but it was certainly pretty much less than how well the company was able to do in the financial year 18-19. The similar way, we talked about return on capital employed. If you'll see, 32% is the return they have given to their investors or shareholders in the in March 2020. And what I talked is anything greater than 10% is pretty much good. So even if you would have invested say 100 rupees, it would have given you 32 rupees in return. So a very good amount, a very good opportunity to go for. uh, yeah, so these are few things I wanted to convey to you people. uh, Other things I would have covered, but there are certain limitations, and since we are uh, done with what time we were having, so this is all what we have for you all. If there are any queries, any questions, the house is open for you all. Okay, so can I explain the PE ratio once again? Yeah, yes, sir. So see, PE ratio is nothing but uh, it shows you like whether the particular stock or say the price of stock is the is something which is acceptable in the market or not. Say if ITC stock is hovering around 100 rupees and the prices of say other companies is hovering around say 90 rupees, then certainly you will think that ITC stock is a bit uh, costlier than the other companies stock which are there in the market. So whether you should go for it or you should go for a company whose share price is say 90 rupees only. So this ratio is certainly dependent upon whatever analysis you have done prior. If your other seven indicators or other seven parameters are giving you a call that this company is doing really great in market, then there is no harm in paying some extra amount to this company. See, if you have two options today, that you can go for ITC, who is doing really great in the market, but they are charging you 100 rupees for a particular share. And there is a company named Hindustan Unilever, who is also doing good, but their return on capital employed is say 15% only, whereas the return on capital employed of ITC is 32%. So in these parameters, HUL is losing the fight between both of these. And so would you prefer going an additional 10 rupees for a better return, or will you satisfy yourself with a lower return? This is something which tells you in this valuation ratio. If a company is doing good financially, the fundamentals are really strong, then paying extra amount is of no no loss. Whereas in a reverse scenario, say ITC is giving you a return on capital employed of say rupees 15%, 15% only, and HUL is giving you a return of say 30%, and the price of HUL is 90 and price of ITC is 100, then better you go for HUL because it is providing you a very good return on capital employed at a pretty less amount. I hope I am pretty much clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any other queries?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, Darshan, sir.
So today on WhatsApp, it was like Zomato IPO was subscribed 38 times. So does this mean that there was one person was there and there were 38 bidders for that one person?
Yeah, yes, sir. Like the percentage and all sort of things go in a very different manner, but you can think it of as like this only, that for every one share, there were 38 bidders. Any other queries, sir?
So if there are no more queries left, we will wind up the session today.
Assuming
Hello.
that, yeah,
Hello. Yeah, am I audible?
yeah, you are.
Sir, thank you. Today is my first class. I couldn't able to attend the previous two classes. Just have a question like, is this about long-term